So, hello and welcome. My name is Steve Pugh, and I do something called a Growth Strategy Podcast. We try and introduce you to really interesting people that can help your business or kind of career. And after an introduction from my wife, who went and bought some of these guys kind of kit from I think it was a pop-up event in Phoenix, which we're going to touch on. Basically, I did some homework, and today we're going to speak to Claire and Deb from Amazing Jane Activewear to basically share their story, find out more about the business, how they get started, what they do. And what I love is to try and bring interesting stories about interesting brands to, I guess, your awareness and to the world. And basically, as a social impact startup, I like people that try and that are trying to make positive impact in the kind of world as well. So if you join us for the next 30-40 minutes, if you comment, it should pop up on my screen. So I'll definitely bring in any comments or questions or that kind of thing. And Claire, Deb, there we go. Perfect. So people can now see you and hear you.
Hi. Hello.
So how's your Monday been? I know we briefly touched on it off air, but just as a general start to the week.
Bitty, very bitty. It's one of those things where, you just touched on there about startups and we are still in theory in startup mode. There's just myself and Deb in the business. So we are everything from, strategy to bag packers. And sometimes you just come in and it's not the day that you expected it to be, and that happened this morning.
Oh wow! I think people often underestimate that, especially when you first set up. It's the fact that often the founder might clean the floors, pack the bags, design the clothes, sometimes make the clothes. So like Ben Francis from Gymshark, when he first started, literally he would sew it as well as. And I think people often underestimate how much stuff there often is to do, as well as the founder, CEO type stuff as well.
Yeah, it's very much trying to balance out your week to make sure that you've got that strategy time, you've got that time together to work on the next step, even the next step being your plans for the following week, next month, next year, as well as time to do the normal things like bag the orders and, tag the item, stock check and things like that. It's all a kind of putting things into the right compartment.
It's still very cool though to have a business that makes actual real stuff. I always appreciate that because there's so much that goes into it, but we all kind of get into that. And for people that don't know who you each are, but also a bit about the business, would you happy to introduce yourselves and then a bit about what the business does?
Sure. Okay. So would you like the business intro first or us individually?
Whatever you want. It's I'm fine.
Okay, well, I'll tell you a little bit about the business first, and then I can go about me, and then I'll pass over to Deb if that's okay with you. So, Amazing Jane, what is Amazing Jane? We are an activewear brand for women. However, we're very different to what you would deem as an activewear brand, because what we actually do is, one, our core audience is perhaps a little bit older than what you see the likes of how Gymshark portray their models. We make clothes for women to help build their confidence. Okay. But we recognize that a lot of women lose their confidence in certain key areas of their life. So after having children, their bodies change. They often lose their identity and they become mum rather than kind of who they used to be in, and that can be challenging through perimenopause and through menopause. So that span can take you from kind of even early 20s, but in our case, we kind of look at our younger demographic of the brand being kind of mid-30s, right up to women in their 60s, 70s. So that's a really, really, really broad audience to try and build clothes for. But what we're finding is they're really glad that we're here.
Okay.
And we're finding that a real common denominator across different sports brands are that nobody's actually thinking about how a woman feels about herself when they're designing clothes. And that's actually what we do first.
Okay.
So we look at all them areas that might change through children, through perimenopause, how you feel about your body in them times and how that changes your confidence. And then we take them key areas, design around them to flatter and help build that confidence back up.
Yeah, cool. So about yourself then, what's your background? How did you get into this?
not clothes.
Okay.
So my background is business development and fitness. So I was a fitness instructor for years, had my own fitness business, taught women out in the communities in Northumberland for about 14 years. Before that, taught dance to children and their parents, well, predominantly their mums in communities in Northumberland, but always on the side. So I have also done a lot of business development work in the Northeast, but also for a national fitness company as well.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of an element of combining the two areas together to do something that I'd never done before.
No, that's right.
And I'd love to say that my background was e-commerce and fashion, but it's not. My background is 100% fitness. I've been in the fitness industry for over 30 years. I ran a very successful ladies-only gym in the Northeast for 16 years. So business, yes, but not within the realms of the industries that we're dealing with now.
No, cool. But at least you both have obviously you both have lived experience of wearing clothes, obviously, but you also still both have a genuine experience of fitness and movement and active wear, both from yourselves and what you've done for quite long. I think people often, they try and pivot too much, but likewise, at least you have a really good grounding in the offer. And then I've got to ask as well, so you're both co-CEO. I was going to say, do either of you look after different parts of the business? Is one of you the finance person and someone else is more marketing, or?
We have a kind of, we're letting it go to see how it develops, but we have gently settled into specific roles, but then there are a lot of shared roles. So I tend to be more on the design side, manufacturing side. I'm a lot more creative than I am financial, and Claire's a lot more financial.
Oh, cool.
And obviously very good with the development.
So how did you two meet?
We actually met on a training course in Bristol.
Okay.
10 years, randomly 10 years ago. Unbeknown to me, Deb recognised me from a different training course, and in the petrol station when we both went to grab something at lunchtime, said to me, "Are you from Newcastle?" Yes, I am. So she'd flown to Bristol for the course, and I'd driven to Bristol for the course, and we both ended up working for that same company who was running the fitness training. And that's pretty much how Amazing Jane started. Because we were both in the fitness industry at the time, we would spend our weekends together on the road in my car, delivering training to prospective fitness instructors. And there we would just talk all the time about why it was so hard to get women to cross the threshold into something they hadn't done before, and how clothes were one of the biggest things. And actually them car journeys 10 years ago are exactly how Amazing Jane started.
So at what point, because the reason I'm going to ask this is that there'll be a lot of people that genuinely might have an itch now. They might be in a job, they might not be in a job, but they've got an itch to start their own thing. How did you go from the idea? Because to launch a clothing brand is no small feat, because you've got so many different designs, sizes, shapes, stock. How did you go about, I guess, what happened next?
Well, we actually started Amazing Jane in 2013.
Okay.
But for all of the things that you've just explained, it didn't get very far. We built a relationship with a leggings manufacturer, and we actually still use the same manufacturer today, but we've done a lot of development work with him, and we just sold some pairs of leggings on the side for 7 years.
Wow.
And then it got to lockdown, and we're sat on Deb's drive, and have you still got an itch to scratch? The same thing. Yeah. And we're very, very tenacious. And I think neither of us would have settled unless we'd have give it a go.
Okay. So is that a case of so in lockdown, did I guess a lot of the fitness stuff stopped? Or did it? Yeah. Okay. No, it's because it's the whole.
It almost went in reverse.
But it's almost, when people say necessity is the, source of all invention, it's the case of, we all went through it, the shit hit the fan. Nobody knew what was going to happen, or what this thing was, or how long it was going to last. So actually in some ways it's brilliant that you did all the legwork over the prior 7 years to actually get to a point where touch some wood. And then, so what happened next? How did you actually go from, do you want to give this a go full time or more, full time?
So we decided that, I think there'd always been a lot of fear as well, about stepping into a world that you know nothing about and being kind of hoodwinked. So we thought we had this masterstroke plan of having some guys involved with us who were kind of growth specialists and who had a great CV that we thought, we'll go along with this. And it was probably the very first giant mountainous lesson that we learned, to really kind of listen to your gut, because we took a lot of bad advice, ended up with a very large premises, with a nice long lease around our neck for space that we didn't need, for growth that we weren't going to see that quickly, even with quadruple our budget. So, but being tenacious, we just get on with things and just try to make it work. We developed our line with some manufacturers, managed to get taken marginally serious. Went through a lot of different times where we were being told, no, that's not how you do it.
Yeah.
Even though it was how we wanted to do it, and that's not how you cut that shape. But that's how we want to cut that shape. So it took us probably up until really the last 6 months to be listened to with regards to sort of sizing and grading and design work. So we're getting there, and that gives us a little bit of strength and a little bit of power to kind of have these conversations to say, that's not the way we want it done. We want it done like this. And
that's cool.
Learn to say no to things as well. So it was very much about, we took some advice. It wasn't great, but we turned it around and, clawed our way back out of that little hole.
Because
when she says little hole, she means like crater.
I can imagine. Leases aren't cheap. Do you know Sarah Blakely from Spanx? Or do you know of them?
Yeah, love her.
Her story is just incredible, and very similar in some ways. Because one thing that I loved about her was the fact that when I did her masterclass, I used to subscribe to this thing called masterclass.com, and it was almost, you got to learn from different people about their journey, what they did. And what I loved about hers was that she knew there was a need for women's shapewear, but she admitted she was a very good salesperson, but she didn't know anything about making clothes. But actually, she would go to factories and say, well, can't we do it like this? And they're like, oh, no. But it was that persistence. And the thing that I really love about her story is that when she managed to first blag her way into one of the big, I think it was Bergdorf's or some big department store, but it's the fact that, but even though she'd turn up every weekend and sell to the shop assistants, anyone in the store, to grab people and tell them about this.
Put them on the counters and things like that.
And it shocked, because when I discovered you guys was that, so my wife is a solicitor. She works for a law firm in Newcastle. So she runs. And so anyway, so she's in Phoenix one day, and she shops every weekend. And she came back and she told me about, have you seen these? They're really good, and they got this thing, and I'm going to ask you to describe it. But what I really kind of loved is that I love people that have a passion to do something, but I also know how much harder it is to make a real physical thing. So when you mentioned before about how you got some bad consultancy advice, but anyone can set up to be a consultant or be a freelance marketer, whichever, where you sell your time. To make a real product is 100 times harder, because there's 1,000 decisions and there's a lot more.
It also takes a lot of balls to get for the financial risk.
Yeah.
Because when you're selling your time, it's your time, and what you're not sat on is a warehouse full of your time. You have control of that, but what we sit on is a warehouse full of stock that we have to shift at a reasonable rate, so that we're not always chasing our tail for cash flow. So there's the pressure of that, and then you've got to keep that stock going and going. We've got to give the people something new to buy, so it's really hard to get that balance. If you've ever read Philip Knight's book Shoe Dog,
yep,
yeah, that's a bigger scale version of what goes on here.
No, I'm a big fan of that. I've got a signed Phil Knight picture on my wall, but it's that kind of thing. Nice. But I appreciate his story and Sarah Blakely's. It's because they both had a dream, and they just work really hard. But it was that kind of thing that I respect what you do, and hence why when my wife mentioned it, and then I thought I reached out a while back and we just tried to set something up. I love to share these stories because there will be people that maybe didn't know who you are or that you exist, but it's that kind of thing of when you go onto your website and you've been featured in loads of really cool places, it all builds trust. And so for me, it comes across mega credible that, okay, I don't buy women's wear, but I do buy stuff from some of the competition. And when I viewed your socials and your website and stuff, it's on par with what I see from a Gymshark or whichever, that actually, it's impressive, and often you don't pat yourself on the back enough for what you've actually achieved. Does that make sense? Because if you're in it all day, every day, you're just in it all day, every day. So actually, if you look back and,
it's really easy to come to the rough times as well.
So if we go back, so at a certain point, I guess you had a discussion about, should we set up? And then lockdown happened, and then it was a case of, should we give this a go? What was
no. No, lockdown happened. And in the middle of lockdown, where there was very little we could do, that's when we decided to give it a go. We were like, look at everything that's happening in the world. We still want to do this. It's now or never.
But there was a big growth in the sector, I believe, because it's very comfortable clothes. But it's almost where, so from that point then, did you have stock, or at the moment you had nothing, you had maybe designs? So when was this?
We had no design. This was, so we made the decision in November 2020.
Okay.
And I'm going to be really honest with you, Steve, in March 2021, so 5 months later, we were still no further forward. We'd spent a lot of money on trying to develop some clothes with somebody in the Northeast who just didn't understand what we wanted to achieve. We had a last chance meeting with someone in the Midlands that we knew from Deb's husband's career 20 years ago, and we just took a punt, and we were like, this is our last chance saloon. If this guy doesn't come through for us, we're just going to go and buy a holiday let and rent it out. That's what we actually said, wasn't it? And 5 hours later, we walked out of that meeting in the Midlands after sitting around a table with a really credible design team as well, and a manufacturer and a logistics partner. He'd got them all in one room for us, and we had a team.
Wow.
And they knew what we wanted. And 6 weeks later, all our designs were signed off and they went to production.
Wow.
And we had to order big because we had to prove ourselves.
How big is big, just to try and get a feel? As in just like number of units. You don't have to put a price to it. It's just
thousands
of
units,
thousands and thousands.
So I think our first order was around 9,000 units of different items, which was multiple of tens of thousands of pounds, which was really terrifying. And then we went on sale on the 21st of August 2021.
Wow, that's still mega impressive. So in less than a year, from November 2020 to actually get a real thing on sale, I think that's really good.
When you say it like that, when somebody says that to us, it's really nice to hear, because we don't think that way.
I know, definitely. Like I wrote a book, and that's a large part of what my business is kind of built on. Writing the book took a few years, but then when lockdown happened, I wrote it up, did all the graphic design, and that took me over a year to do that. And that was just a book, never mind 9,000 pieces. And it's that's because what's also interesting is the fact that it was Deb's husband's contact. So it was your physical network of people that you'd kind of met in the past. Obviously came good, which is quite cool. But it's also disappointing that people let you down. But I think that comes down to your gut feel and how important it is to avoid, I'm not going to say...
learning curve, wasn't it?
And I think there's has been a lot of people along the way, because activewear is for a lot of people is a set thing. It's a set shape. It's a set look. And we were trying to go completely against all of that and trying to not make things tight fitted.
Yeah.
You know, and generic. We were trying to design for specific body shapes, which means not every item that we sell has exactly the same size and scale, because there's certain items are made for different shapes of women,
but thing
where
is,
they hold their weight.
but through
like
doing that, what you've done is create a unique brand position, which actually sets you apart from, I'm going to pick Gymshark again, you know, but it's almost where every brand should do that, where if you look at a cluster, you look at the groups where Adidas, Nike, Gymshark, others, if they're all doing something very similar, it makes you can't outcompete them on stock or marketing spend or whichever. So I would, and it makes perfect sense to completely pivot and go the opposite, especially if it's an underserved kind of market. Do you remember the first time your first sale ever came in?
Oh, absolutely. So where is it? It's over there, actually. So we've got a little bell. Get the bell. So we bought this little bell off Amazon, like £2 bell, little bell.
That's cool.
And we did a pre-sale. We did a pre-sale before the website went live. We did a pre-sale 4 weeks before, in July 2021, and we opened it to invitation only.
Nice.
And it was
Clever.
people that we knew had been following us, who had supported us, who had bought pairs of leggings over the previous 7 years. And I think on that first opening day, we sold about £3,000 on that pre-sale day. And obviously it was invitation only. There were about 100 invites went out. And we had that little bell, and we sat and rang that bell all day, whilst every time we made a sale. But actually, even still now, nearly 2 years on, we still have a theoretic, like a bell, don't we? So we have a ching. So every time we make a sale now, one of us will shout ching. And if we're not together, one of us will text the other with a little bell emoji. It's even still now. And you know, we were doing some work on kind of like where we want to be. And I had a meeting with someone, and she was like, the best place to be ever was where I had to silence the ching, where I had to turn the ching. And we're like, we want to mute the ching. We don't want the ching to stop. We want to be able to mute it.
No, we wanted to turn from a ching to a consistent tone.
Yeah.
But I think people do underestimate how important it is to, I remember when I got my first sale, and it's because what's important is the fact that you put your heart and soul into something. You try and create something, but you never actually know, is anyone going to want it? And then when they're willing to spend their hard-earned money on something you've created, is really, I think it's very cool. And then it's that balance of where, again, you know, it almost there's a differentiation, you know, a way to differentiate your company versus others. It'll be on the feedback and making people feel special, because you can, you know, relate to those customers and build a relationship there in a way that a Gymshark can't. And it's that kind of thing. If there's loads of ways that smaller businesses can outcompete a Nike, because actually you get to know your distinct community better than other people, which I think is pretty cool.
We have a Facebook group, which is the Amazing Jane community. I think there's just under 1,200 women in there.
Wow.
But they are our sounding board for everything. So when we're designing a new item, we go in there and we talk to them live about it. We talk to them about why we're creating it. We actually changed our leggings. We did a lot of development work on our leggings last summer, ready to relaunch in September, because they were good, but they weren't fantastic. And we wanted them to be fantastic. We wanted them to be standout. So we did a lot of stuff, and it was all based on the feedback from our community group. So we went and we added 2 inches on the waistband to make them ultra high waisted, so that it smoothed their tummies more. We added pockets. We added, you know, we did all these different things, even down to we design all of the graphics on our leggings as well.
Oh, nice.
Make sure that they add shape to female legs. So everything we do though starts with consultation in that community.
No, I think it's very, very cool. Can you tell me or talk about, there's the product that you have, I believe it's the leggings with the pouch. Is it called Track Me?
Tracker.
Can you talk about that and where that came from and what the inspiration was?
Yes, absolutely. So as I just said, we were doing the work on the leggings, and it was last August, and we'd had the sample pair, They arrived the day before I flew to the States. My husband's best friend lives in the States, so we were going to stay with them for a week. And I was wearing the sample pair for the flight out. And I text Deb and I'm like, these leggings, and they're game changing, they're next level. This waistband, it's so comfortable, this, and this. Anyway, my husband's friend, Paul, is a marathon runner, and he runs a running group in his town for women who don't want to run on their own or are just getting into running and want to meet other women. And we started talking about women's safety and why he set the group up and all these different things. And midway through the conversation, his phone beeped to tell him that his daughter had just got off the school bus.
Okay.
And I said, how do you know that? She's got an Apple AirTag on. And then it was like one of them, the little light bulb moments. So I rang Deb from Cape Cod and was like, what if we added this pocket into every pair of leggings that we sell? And she was like, yeah, let's do that. So she then rang our manufacturer, who was literally starting the September batch of leggings for the new range launch, managed to get them added in, and they're just standard on all of our leggings ever since.
Because it is, so basically my wife gets up mega early. It's not too bad in the summer because it's still light, but she might get up at 5, go for a run, and it's dark, especially in winter, either late at night or in the morning. And especially where we live, so we live in Low Fell, and she'll run up past the Angel up to Kibblesworth and basically but like kind of countryside. And it's that element of where
that's remote.
yeah, but as the husband, but also for her as well, it's that element of where, like, she has an Apple Watch and she's got the phone, which she doesn't always take with her, but it's that element of where if she had a slip, if she had a fall, if she didn't come back, if she was late, it's a genuine concern that you don't want to hold someone back from doing what they love to do. But I just, I got it, and obviously Lisa got it, and it's I can see that it's that genuine inspiration, which combined with everything else that you do, I think it's just really cool. But again, it comes back to the product innovation, that you're listening to the customers, trying to figure out actually what's important to people and how can you make it work, I guess.
Well, we make activewear to try and build confidence in women, and that confidence comes from different areas. And one of them is exercising confidently, like being confident in your personal safety, because there's a lot of women who maybe haven't exercised for a while who start exercising, and what they do is they go, I'm not good enough for the gym, there's people there, and I'm not good enough for that class because there's people there, but I could do couch to 5k.
Yep.
So then you've got to think about, how do they feel confident on doing them runs when they're on their own, and how can we support that? And that's where kind of that whole idea developed from.
No, I love it. Can we talk about marketing? Because I think it's something really interesting that with how did you approach how you promote the business? Because it's one of the hardest things to do, because you've got a very clever name, because when you've got Amazing Jane Activewear, it says what it is. So it's uplifting, it's empowering, but then it's active. So that's very clever. But then on like socials and the Facebook group, did you kind of just look to see what other people had done and almost implement it yourself? Or how did you come up with the content that you do?
Go on.
That's been a kind of one of our biggest learning curves, really, that because it wasn't our industry, and because e-commerce wasn't our industry, and because although we'd had businesses that both relied on marketing and promotional plans, it still felt very different doing it from an e-commerce perspective.
Okay.
We listened to a lot of people, and what we've realized now is everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
We need to just listen to our own. And so we did end up, we kind of had our image, and then we would change it because someone would say, oh, you shouldn't have it like that, and you need to change this on your website. So we change everything. Then we'd have somebody else's idea of our image, and then somebody else would come along and say, you need to change this. And we have chopped and changed so many times until eventually we just went, right, that's it. We're doing this ourselves.
That was was it last summer?
Yeah. What we ended up doing actually was we did what everybody said to do, was get some models. And they were lovely models, but they were probably younger than our demographic.
Got you.
In the nice white studio, and we did the photo shoots, and it just wasn't actually what we wanted. So when we just made a big change, I went on an online course to learn how to take better photographs with my phone. and we went outdoors and we got our customers, the people who actually were Amazing Janes, and we started taking their photographs. And now we only use our customers in every single photograph.
But but that's so much better. And this is as someone that I'm obviously into my camera equipment and I know a lot about photography, but it's the trust element that people look, people can generally tell if a photo's taken on a phone or not. But they actually trust it more because they can kind of tell it hasn't been played with, it hasn't been photoshopped. But also people want to see people that look like them, feel like them, so they can associate with it. That actually that's 100% the right thing to do in a way that, again, Gymshark or others would never do that. Does that make sense? And the funny thing is about marketing is it's all about the customer. What does the customer want? And how can you, if it's about confidence, if you had some Victoria's Secret model in your clothes, that's not going to give confidence to someone that's just had 4 kids that they can't live up to
not
that.
Relatable.
But this is what's really interesting. You go.
We're designing clothes for women's bodies in certain areas where they may be carrying weight, where they don't want that weight to show. So there's no point in photographing that item on somebody who doesn't have those areas.
Yeah.
So what we do is we'll photograph an item on lots of our different customers. So, you may not have weight in that place, but there's the top on that person. There's a person who's, we'll photograph each item on as many different body shapes as possible. So everybody can look and go, oh, that woman looks like me. She's my height, she's my size, she's my age, and that's what it's going to look like. So it gives them much more confidence to buy, knowing it's going to look nice.
Because I think from socials, you're both different heights as well. Is that fair to say?
Oh goodness,
yes,
I think
very much so. So I'm the short one,
and I'm very much the tall one. So I'm just under 6 foot.
Okay.
Like just under 6 foot. And
I'm just over 5 foot.
But the thing is, what I thought was really interesting, because I was going through your socials whilst we were waiting to do this, and the last video I think you did was just talking about sizing. So it's a case of, if you normally buy this size, this is a loose, but it's all the questions that people actually want to know. That it's very clever. It's exactly what you should do. Does that make sense? And often it does take someone else.
We actually go on the road a lot as well. So last week, from Thursday to Sunday of the weekend before, we were on the road. How many miles did we do?
Oh, just under 1,000.
So Claire drove 1,000 miles.
Wow.
I piloted, and we did 4.
We did 3. So we did Exeter, then Somerset, and then Derbyshire, and then we came home. And then on Friday, just gone, we did Cramlington. So we did 4 pop-up shops in 8 days.
Wow.
But it's amazing, because when you get to speak to women face to face and you get to explain to them what we're trying to do, when we can go, we're very, very good at going, no, you need this size.
Yeah.
And the amount of women that come in, and it's kind of in a woman's makeup that they go, okay, so I'm normally a 12 to 14, but I'll buy a 14. Or they'll go, I'm a size 12, but I don't know your brand, so I'm going to buy a 14.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what women do. So it's really good for us to speak to them, because 9 times out of 10, that woman who might have bought a 14, even though she's a 12, ends up in a 10.
Yeah.
And then that gives her another boost. So she cartwheels out the door in a size that she would never have bought online in a million years.
No, okay. But that's part of the added value that you don't get with other people. Can I ask you a question about, well, you've mentioned a few of them. It's like, so since you've kind of set up, what kind of challenges did you face?
I mean,
Thousands
this was only 30 to 40 minutes.
How long have we got? No, I think just personally, it took us a while, but I think we're there now. We needed to get over those barriers of thinking that we didn't know enough because it was in somebody else's industry. When really all along, we are in the industry of women.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We are designing clothes for women, and that is something that we've worked with women for the whole of our working lives.
Of course you have, yeah.
We've stood in front of women. We've had roomfuls of women.
You are women.
Watched how women move. We are women. But we've taught women, seen them come to class, seen how they turn up to exercise, noticed all of the confidence issues, noticed how they, they hide at the back of the room, seeing every type of oversized t-shirt somebody new to exercise will adorn. So that's where we need to remember that's our strength, and the rest of it will follow, because the main thing is understanding women, what they want, how they want to feel, how they want to look in the clothes. So all of that is a little superpower of its own, and that far outweighs the fact that we don't have design qualifications or e-commerce, years of history behind us. The passion is much greater than
and to us, that's the only bit that matters. You can buy in the rest of it. It's the knowledge and the insight that you have that other people don't have. And what's the dream for the future?
Our dream is to be a household brand.
Okay.
So, we could talk, we want to make this and we want to do that, but actually we want to be a household brand, because if you're a household brand, then the other things that support that should come along.
No, it's cool.
And that's, women knowing who we are in every home means that takes us a step closer to helping them women feel awesome as well. Okay. And that's what this is all about.
How did you, on your website, you've been featured in loads of really cool places. From memory, I think there was BBC was on there and quite a few. So you've definitely got the logos on, which is the social proof thing, which is very cool, because it instantly builds the trust of, this must be good because. How did you go about getting those? Did people just write about you, or did you do proactive outreach do you have a contact journalist to write about you?
So a little bit of both. So we've reached out to some different places, but we also worked with someone from the Northeast last year when we launched Track Her to help us get that out there, and she did very well for us, and we did very well with that campaign, and the BBC got involved with us, and Women's Running, Trail Running magazine. So there were a lot of people that responded really positively to Track Her. And then it's, also it's been building up local relationships, building national relationships, being in the right place at the right time, doing things like the trade mission that we did in Dubai in March, and kind of stepping outside our bubble.
Yeah.
And meeting new people and kind of tapping into them relationships to grow as well.
Okay, because it's just doing all the right things. That if you go back to either Sarah Blakely or Phil Knight at Nike, it took them all a long time, and they just kept going. And people often think that these things are going to happen overnight, as we're actually. It's just keep going and go, and because you never know. In the same way with your husband's contact. It only takes one introduction. That it's so easy to give up when you're like, I could just earn more money in a job without the stress. But then when you've created something which is really special and helps solve a problem and people love it and you've got a community, I guess there's like huge fulfillment in kind of going on that journey. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I've not downloaded Indeed now for over a year, so that's progress. Because, in the beginning, I'm not saying that it's not hard now, it's really hard, but it's hard in a different way than it was in the first 6 months. And there is I think we can both agree that in the first 6 months, had we have not had this lease chained around our neck, there were probably multiple times where we would have just thrown in the towel.
Got you.
But the lease is also a little bit of a silver lining, because it just here, and it makes us practice our tenacity, which is our core value. And we have to keep coming back to that and saying, remember, we're tenacious. And so sometimes the fact that we have it has made us not throw the towel in.
Do you think because there's two of you, that's kept you going, as opposed to if you would have either done it on your own? 100%.
From my perspective, absolutely, yeah. Deb spends her life doing this to me, either off the ceiling or off the ground.
But I think it's
we're very different, but it works very well together.
Because it's, I work on my own, and it's that balance. I talk to a lot of people on podcasts, but it's almost I get it, and it's, especially when times are shit and you're like, fucking hell, shall I just give up? And there's a sexy job on Indeed that you could do. It's easy, and you've got to really want to kind of do this. I noticed we're 40 minutes in, so I'm going to kind of move on to the next kind of bit. Normally I ask people if you're happy to share, what's the best piece of advice you've ever had? One each.
I think we're the same on this, because we talked about it earlier. But so it needs to do what it says on the tin. That's the thing we tell ourselves all of the time, something we've heard a lot. And the second bit for me was being told it's all a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is.
What do you mean by the numbers game, just so I can understand?
So my background was in health clubs, but on the sales side of things. And basically, e-commerce is all about sales. So if you've got 10 really, really happy customers,
mm-hmm.
then all you need to do is keep doing what you're doing, but build the numbers on it, build the numbers on it, build the numbers on it.
No, I think it's e-commerce is a different one, because you obviously, by the sounds of it, do really well at pop-up shops, trade shows, where people can feel the passion and talk to someone and get the interaction. I guess when you do stuff online, it's harder to build that relationship. But I think what works then well is, say, on your Instagram, the last video, it's you two talking about sizing, but you can tell that you're real people, you've got a thing, you're passionate about it, and it builds that trust. So even though it is theory and in e-commerce business, you can still build the trust with the consumer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're not just we're not faceless. It's very much that we are driving this, and people do respond very well to us. But you're right, it's because there's the passion there. We're not just doing this to try and, I mean, if we were in this to try and make some quick money, this would not be the business for that. So it's definitely not for that reason, but it's because we want to be here, and that comes across.
I think so. The next question I ask, which you could pick yourselves 10, 12 years ago, you could pick 6 months ago, whatever. If you were to give advice to your younger selves, what would it be?
Mine would be, don't worry about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
You are good enough, and you definitely don't need to be any taller.
Mine would absolutely be to trust your gut.
Yeah.
Because and that doesn't even just go back to 6 months ago, but 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even back to when, I'm at college, and to trust your gut, because you always end up where you're meant to be, but there's a lot of, like Deb said earlier, there's a lot of outside influences that can make you think that you're wrong. So just to have a little bit of faith in yourself.
No, I think it's cool. Is your plan to both sell direct and also via outlets, retail stores, Phoenix, etc.?
We're on the fence a little bit.
Okay. I understand both. Yeah.
We're on actually where we would actually like to be is more in independence.
Okay, got you.
So rather than in big department, don't get me wrong, being in John Lewis was fabulous. It is fabulous being in John Lewis, but you also you lose your identity a little bit. And we're all about, we're about women supporting women. We're about supporting individual women and groups of women. So why not be in independent boutiques who are also trying to do a very similar thing? So a lot of independent boutiques, we just did one in Cramlington actually, and they buy from different brands. So why not us be a brand on a high street, but in alignment with the rest of our values as well?
No, I've got you.
So I think whilst obviously e-commerce is absolutely our thing, and we will move more into events for Amazing Jane on a bigger scale. I think from a wholesale perspective, independence is where we would like to be. Because
the irony is that there's a Sweaty Betty shop in Gosforth, and in the front window it says, "Buy local, buy from us." And I'm like, you're a global corporation, you're not a local. It was anyway. It's just, it is what it is. But I get that people will genuinely, buy into what you're trying to do. And the other thing that crossed my mind as well is obviously I'm at the moment in like a filming studio. I have this in Team Valley, but it could open more doors that within the space and the lease that you've got in the factory, more things that might help people get into fitness. You could actually film from the studio space and stuff. I call it studio space, the factory space, the lease office space that you might have, but to open up all those doors.
Well, as it happens, just through that door there.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we haven't told you is that in November 2021, so we'd launched 2 months, 3 months, and lo and behold, it didn't take off like we needed it to take off, and we got this big rent round our neck, and we were panicking.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, right, okay, we're gonna lose this because the rent and the outgoings are swallowing up all of the small sales that we're making, so we're gonna get nowhere. So again, driving to the Midlands to meet our design team, we think very well when we're outside the office. So if we know that we've got some important decisions to make, we take ourselves out and we go on a road trip, or we go somewhere for the day, because it allows us the break from the daily life to kind of then just think. And we actually turned half of this building that we're in now, the office, into a fitness studio for women.
Wow.
So over 100 women come every week for fitness classes in our offices now.
But
and that helps pay the rent.
Great minds. But so for instance, I have a Peloton bike, so I do Peloton classes in here, and the idea is it's when you, different people have different needs. That for me, when I used to, so I might finish at 6 o'clock today or 5:55, but if the spinning class is at a set time, unless I know I can hit it, I'll be like, I've got too much time to go, or I've missed it. That you need it to work around you. But because you have a particular audience, you could actually create content if you wanted to, which adds value to what you do. But it was almost when you're trying to think through how do you utilize the space. Obviously, you've already nailed it, which is brilliant to see. It was an idea I had when we were talking. But obviously, well done. I think is already kind of cool.
Thanks.
Is there anything you would like to talk about and plug before we go?
Just if you're listening to this really, or anyone that's catching this on a replay, and you work out and you're a woman, just give our leggings a try. Anything that you might want in terms of sizing, we, shocker, handle all of our customer service ourselves as well. And it's really important to us that customer service is exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
So we will answer any question, we will get you in the right size, and we'd love you to give our leggings a try.
What's your website, active socials? Where can people find you?
Amazing Jane Activewear on all of our socials, and our website is amazingjane.com.
Cool. Well, I've really enjoyed this, and I have massive respect for anyone that I have respect for anyone that works for themselves or does their own thing. But if you make a physical product, it's so much harder that I respect that more. Does that make sense? And it's just, I'm a big fan, have been for a long time, of Spanx, especially because it's still privately owned. I love that about it as well, which Nike isn't. But it's almost where, as soon as my wife kind of mentioned you guys and said what you did, and she explained the brand, and then I did some digging, and then obviously looked at your stuff. I just thought it was really cool. I wanted to kind of share the story, and then obviously this gets pushed out onto lots of different social channels and stuff as well. But no, I really appreciate you taking time with your busy kind of schedules. I'll stay in touch. Whereabouts in the Northeast are you based?
Washington, just up the road from me.
There you go. I might come and say hello at some point as well. But no, cool. Well, thank you for your time, and stay in touch.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.